What's up, everybody? Welcome to Operators episode 1776. We're here, guys. We talk about e-commerce, if we're bullish or not. Jason talks about system one versus system two thinking. I talk about how great Q4 is going to be, how great my Q3 was. It was basically just Sean bragging for about an hour. But what's new? That's why you come to the Operators podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for Fulfill, the number one sponsor. Thank you to Northbeam, the number two sponsor. Thank you to Postscript, the number two sponsor. They share that spot. I use all three of those softwares: SMS from Postscript, Data from Northbeam for marketing, and then Fulfill is my general ledger accounting, order management system, ERP, the full kit and caboodle coming through Fulfill. So thank you so much, guys, for being here. I love you all. Mwah. One of the most challenging things about running an e-commerce business at scale, when you're doing thousands of transactions a day across multiple different sales channels, is the operational complexity that scales with it. You have to do refunds on eBay, and you have to do customer service tickets on Amazon, and everything just kind of gets out of hand. You get reports from Shopify and Amazon, and all of them have weird, unique parameters that don't match the way you look at things, and you're manipulating data. And you just want one source of truth that has gross revenue, discounts, COGS, margin. You just want one thing that has all of it. And that's where Fulfill comes out of the box with the best reporting in the business. It provides accurate, reliable data systems. It does order management for you. And it does all that without needing, customization. They've worked with e-commerce businesses like mine at Ridge, like Hexclad, and they've built the most accurate, up-to-date reporting that comes right out of the box. It has real-time insights. You can make better decisions. And you know when you sell something, what you sold it for, what the COGS were. And if you have to do returns or refunds, you know all of that in one spot, in one out-of-the-box report. So thank you so much, Fulfill, for being the flagship sponsor of this pod. If you order something from me, it will be sent through Fulfill's data pipelines to my 3PL. If you do it from Amazon, that comes into the Fulfill reporting as well. So thank you, Fulfill. You're the best.
Daniel Kahneman is like the most famous behavioral economist, and it was something that I studied in Columbia back in 2001. And some guy, Marketing Max, who I wasn't even following, but apparently is pretty good content, tweeted Kahneman's big idea. We have two systems of thinking: fast, automatic, and emotional is system one. Slow, methodical, slow, logical, and deliberate is system two. And then he breaks it down a little further, because I think this is really incredibly useful to check yourself when you're making decisions in business and in life. And it's so funny that this guy distilled it down into a nice tweet with a bunch of subtweets with examples of behavioral biases. And we've all talked about these on the pod. I know you have, Mike. But system one is fast, subconscious, automatic, used often in everyday decisions, and is highly error prone because you're just being emotional, right? And then system two is slow, conscious, effortful, complex decisions, and reliable. And this is like through tons and tons of research over like decades and decades. Daniel Kahneman and Tversky, Amos Tversky, who, by the way, gets no credit anymore. It's all about Daniel Kahneman because I think he wrote a book, kind of like a Malcolm Gladwell type of situation book. But you think about things like the overconfidence bias and the anchoring effect and the sunk cost fallacy and all of the emotional reactions that impair good decision making. And it's funny because I'm like, now as we've gotten so big, so much of my job is people management now. And I just have to change the way I think and work. But I'm trying to get people, at least to the extent I can have any influence on the way people think, the way our employees think, is be like, are you sure you're like using system two right now? And all decisions have a combination of system one and system two, but I'm on like a system two rampage right now.
There's some weird amount of irony in that, though. Like my system one thinking is just ripping apart everybody who's not using system two.
Yeah, man.
I'm on an emotional rampage. What how often do you think in business, how often do you think people are making decisions from that are like more gut, um, like those quick ones, right? System one. How often do you think people stop and slow down?
It was a question for me. I'll go. I would
I
love
don't
to
know.
hear what everyone
I'm
else
just
thinks.
curious what everybody
I'd love
thinks.
to hear whatever. I'll just say it really quick. I just think that the default setting is system one for everyone. That's the lizard brain. And I think you have to be like a highly self-aware person to be like, oh, I got to get myself into system two. And I take this back not only to business school, but when I was a lawyer. I've talked about this before. When you go to law school, you're required to argue both sides of every issue in your exam. And I think that's a really good process and really good thinking. And I don't forget who I was listening to recently, someone on Twitter or some podcast, and it's like, if you want to be really good at understanding any issue, you just have to be able to argue both sides. And when you system one it, you can't.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the higher up in an organization, the more likely you default to system one, right? And because if you think about like an executive, they're always like just going off their gut, making calls. Jason, you often bring up that guy who maybe was a mentor to you, who would only work 3 hours a day, but he would just blitzkrieg those 3 hours, right? He would show up, the whole office ran around him, everyone was just like there to support him. I mean, that feels like very system one behavior, right? Not very in depth soul searching happening if you're just showing up and shouting at people. And I feel like it's a very easy crutch for executives and founders and owners to just be like, well, it's my thing, so I'm system one in this whole building.
System one is founder mode. Is that what you're saying,
Yeah,
Sean?
I've got two takes on this. One is that I think early on in a company, especially when you're bootstrapped the way that we are, you just have to be in system one a bunch. You don't have the time to just sit and deliberate things. You've got to create action. You've got to create revenue, and so there's just a lot of making things happen. And then as the company grows, you start to see how this strength slowly turns to maybe more of a neutral and then can actually become a liability. And one of the things that I'll tell my team is that I've been in the same role for, I guess at this point, 9 years, but I've probably had 5 different jobs. And man, early on, they just needed a system one thinker, decisive, fast, bias to action, do something rather than do nothing. And now it's almost the opposite of what we need. If I'm being system one, I'm either making people not feel heard or I'm not thinking an issue all the way through. My second kind of take on this is that when you're an executive, basically what's happening is you're constantly getting fed information and then being asked to make judgments and decisions. And so after a while, you you start doing a lot of pattern identification, and you start to very quickly feel like, okay, what's this? What's this? Okay, it's this. And some of that was out of necessity, and some of it's out of you've just seen a lot of situations. And I'll tell you what, man, you talk about one place where system one thinking won't go very well. You try it in your marriage for a little bit, and you see how that goes for you, especially for the gentlemen listening to this podcast.
Are you trying to say that your wife is system wanting and you need to system to it?
I'm saying when your wife brings you something about her day or a problem she's facing and you try to system one it, it will not go well for you.
But Mike, you talked about how younger companies, executives should be they kind of by default are more system one. I actually think that it's not that hard to switch gears. No matter how fast, you have to decide if you have like the self-awareness and you're able to say, "Oh, hang on a second. Let me just check this. Let me see how I think it's really good decision making. I think that's why you didn't even know it, right? But that's why you were great as a part of a young bootstrap company. Because even though you're moving fast and biased to action, it's still leveraging system two more, even unconsciously, just because you are such a good leader and such a good manager and such a pro. I think that happens to all of us. I think everyone has the ability to pop off and fly off the handle, and it's really all about bringing it back. I mean, I know it happens to me all the time. I want to get, stuff happens and I get annoyed and I want to call like two or three different people and talk about it, and I'm dying to do it, dying to go bitch or dying to go gossip. And you know what? It's you just have to hold back. You just have to restrain yourself because it's typically, it's just not worth it.
Are there simple like is there a simple decision matrix or framework for like when you should use one or the other? Like it can't just be as simple like, oh, my business is bigger now, we should slow down. Like there's got to be a set of filters that people could apply at any scale company
I
to
think
say
the
like,
one-way door, two-way door thought process is really helpful here. This is, I think, popularized by Amazon, but the idea and Bezos, but the idea being that there are some decisions that are kind of like glass balls that once they're made, they shatter and you can't unmake them. They're one-way doors. You walk through it, and if you don't like the room you're in, well, you're in that room. You're not coming back out. And then there's two-way door decisions where you can walk into a room and say, "I don't like it in here," and walk right back out. It's more like a rubber ball decision. And I think in general, the idea of being able to distinguish as a leader between what are the one-way door decisions and what are the two-way door decisions. And hey, we can be type 1 with these two-way door decisions. We don't have to sit here and litigate and spend weeks talking about what we should do because we can make the decision, we can gather data, and we can quickly pivot, change. But it's the one-way door decisions that you better be doing type 2, or you're going to find yourself in a bunch of rooms you don't want to be in.
so it's mostly about risk, right?
And permanence, I think.
Permanence.
I mean, it's kind of like one of the things I'll say to people is if you're talking about, testing a new creative on Facebook, bias to action. What's the downside if you test it and it doesn't go well? If you're talking about having a baby or getting married, bias to inaction, type 2 that.
You don't think Facebook ads are as important as children? Like
Sean,
that's
I would never offend you in such a way as saying that.
yeah. This proves that you do not spend enough on Facebook ads.
It's true.
There's some Facebook ads that cost a lot more than kids. I'll just say that. You got $1 million
We
ads.
once had a Google ad where this was back in the Quibids days, but we accidentally put in a $5 bid instead of a 50-cent bid, or maybe it was a $50 bid. I think it was a $50 bid instead of a 50-cent bid. And you're never going to believe what happened next. Google took it and ran with it and spent
No.
like $150,000 in, like a matter of hours.
Shocker.
Man. Well, Jason, thank you for bringing this new panzerism, fast versus slow thinking. There's a place for both in your life and your organization. I think we should just really highlight that, like, system 2 is not inherently better, right? Sometimes you just need a system 1, a lot of shit, just get it out of the way. But finding space for both is important.
Yeah, and I'll just leave it at this. I think you should read Marketing Max's tweet all the way through if you haven't, and look at all the biases that Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky outlined in their research. And if you just know what they are, like subconsciously, your brain will just make better decisions because you'll be asking yourself in the back of your mind, like, am I being overconfident here? Or am I like anchoring on something, or is this like an availability bias? It's just something that I know that's available to me, and therefore I think it's right. Look through those things and just your brain will work. Your brain is so incredibly smart, right? Like your brain will process that and use that going forward. The more you know.
I want to add one more piece to this. When I was early on as a CEO, I totally had the grind mentality of if you're not putting in tons of hours every week, if you're going on vacation, then you just don't have what it takes. I would get annoyed. I mean, I say this to my shame, not because I'm proud of it, but I would get annoyed when other people on our team would take vacation. I just was like, come on, are you just not in it? And what I have learned in time is that vacation is not just good when we're sick of working and we need a break, but that actually vacation matters a lot in this realm because type 2 thinking, there's 3 different types of brainwaves that we have, alpha, beta, and gamma. So beta is basically type 1 thinking. It's just we're repeating things that we've always done and we can do it quickly and we're not considering how we're doing things. It's just speed and repetition. Alpha is when our brain's totally relaxed. This is like in the shower when, if you ever have shower thoughts, or you hear noises that you wouldn't have heard before, it's because your brain's relaxed. And then gamma is when our brain is reconsidering ways to do things. It's kind of looking at different alternatives and it's able to be more creative. And what I found is that a lot of this type 2 thinking requires my brain to be in a wave that's kind of difficult for me to get to when I'm in the office. And that vacation not only is good for your longevity because you don't burn yourself out, but I actually come back from vacation a lot of times with my best thoughts about where the business needs to go next because my brain's able to relax and I'm able to do more of that alpha and gamma thinking that just doesn't happen on a day-to-day basis. So ironically, it seems like you would be the best, most effective leader if you work the most hours. But one of the reasons why that's just not true is that you have to spend time in all of these different modes. And in the office, it's always going to be difficult to do anything other than this type 1 beta thinking.
That's why Sean stays home.
Well, no. So my brain only has sigma waves. So
Postscript is the only SMS solution you should be using as a brand store owner because their sole focus is on SMS. They're the biggest innovators in the space, and their latest launch of Postscript AI is proof of this. I got to see the demo a couple months back and immediately wanted in on the beta. And over the course of a 4-week period, Postscript generated for Ridge over $124,000 in AI-driven revenue. We used a holdout, so I can confidently say 12,000 of that is purely incremental. A 9% lift in browse abandonment, 14% on checkout, and our best performing abandoned cart flow had a 29% lift on click-through rate and a 21% lift on earnings per message. Should I say that again, but maybe a little slower? 12,000 in incremental revenue, a 9% lift on our browse abandonment, 14% lift on our checkout abandonment, and a 21% lift on our abandoned cart automation. And the work from our team was close to zero to generate these numbers. There's 2 things about Postscript AI that I'm personally really excited about. One is Brand Center. It's the central nucleus of all of their AI message testing. We get to feed them exactly how we want to sound, what words to say, avoid, who we want our personas to be, and tune that over time to make sure our AI-generated messaging is on brand as much as possible. I think Brand Center will power messaging everywhere potentially. Right now, we've just got it in our SMS flows, but I think it could go a lot more places. The second one is now that you've got this Brand Center, you can do infinity testing. So you can imagine maybe once, twice, 3 times a quarter, we're setting up an A/B test to understand, is this message better than this one? Infinity testing does that in the background constantly, testing hundreds and thousands of variations to identify the optimal messaging given each flow. When I first heard this described, it immediately made me think that A/B testing feels very archaic. So I'm incredibly excited about both Brand Center and Infinity testing. So if you're in D2C marketing, you need to check this out. They've completely transformed how the team at Ridge is approaching SMS. Go to postscript.io/AI to learn more.
let's talk about e-commerce. So I sent a tweet. You guys wanted to talk about it. It's a 2-parter. So the first tweet I sent out there was about why I'm bullish on e-commerce. Okay. And there's some data we can reference. And Finn is definitely going to include both of these tweets in the description. Sometimes we say we're going to do that and we don't, but this time it's definitely going to be there. So you can look in the description, you can click. So the 2-parter, the first part is why I'm bullish on e-commerce. And it's a chart from the Federal, it's not the Federal Reserve, St. Louis, whoever's in charge of like keeping this data. But e-commerce penetration peaked at 16% in the depths of COVID. Okay. Part 2 of this tweet is that we were actually definitely in an e-commerce recession from basically 21 to 23, right? Let me explain that a little bit. If e-commerce penetration is 16%, let's say that there's like 500 billion in GMV happening online. It's I think it's double that, but whatever, right? Mid-COVID, 500 billion in GMV happening online. And then that number goes down to 14%. Okay. That's a 13% decline in 2 years. And even if the real GDP grew 3%, we're still talking about like 6% GMV declines per year in e-commerce. That's really, really bad, right? That is like great financial crisis level of recession. So we have definitely been in an e-commerce recession. The good news is in Q2 2024, we're back to 16%. And I think Q3 2024, we will be matching the COVID level highs, which means from here going forward, you build in GMV growth because the economy grows and you have higher penetration. We're just getting to a point where there's more dollars flowing around online for the first time in 3 years, basically. So the net dollars happening online is actually set to increase going into Q4, going into next year. And that makes me incredibly bullish on the industry. Where do I see this going? Eventually, we do get to 30% penetration online. It will double from here. And when you factor in a 3% compounding economy in the next 6 years, we could be talking that there's going to be 2.5x as many dollars happening online as this day right now. So if you do nothing and you just maintain your current velocity, your business could probably double by the end of the decade. So that's incredibly exciting and a breath of fresh air into this industry. What do you guys think about that?
Sean, does that data? So we're talking about total online spend, right? We're not talking about change in mix that can be depressed by overall lack of economic activity. Is that? I mean, because that's very powerful. Is that true?
This is just the raw percentage of transactions. What percentage of them happen on a screen powered by the internet?
Okay, so percentage of transactions online versus offline is increasing, or is planned to increase. But what about overall spend in the market? What about overall consumer spend? How does that affect your analysis?
Right. That's a great point. This is percentage of dollars. So if in Q2 2022, sorry, in Q2 2020, there was $100 being spent in the consumer space. E-commerce had its highest penetration ever at 16.4 of those dollars happening online. If that number went down to 80 and e-commerce penetration stayed the same at 16.4, it would be a higher percentage, but that's not what happened. So even in a depressed environment, even with less consumer spending, the share of transactions happening decreased as well. So we have definitely been in an e-commerce recession. We've been fighting that. And it's weird that like a lot of people don't like to talk about that. I mean, Shopify is a public company, so they have to put out numbers that are positive. Amazon has kind of skirted away from caring about e-commerce these past 2 years, right? They've just reported on ads growth and their e-commerce business has mostly been flat. But we are definitely in a point where if consumer spending was down at all, well, e-commerce consumer spending was way down then because there's real net contraction there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing about this tweet that's such a great point, Sean, is that the way that we experience anything is so captive to the way that it's been going recently and our expectations, right? And one of the things, just to give context on this chart, I'm sure most of the people listening know this, but there was very famously during COVID this like 10 years and 8 weeks chart that went around that basically it showed how e-commerce sales as a percentage of total retail sales had been kind of increasing, I don't know, 15% per year or something like that, very reliably for an extended period of time. And then all of a sudden, in April of 2020, there was this hockey stick moment where all of a sudden sales got to a percentage of where you would have expected the country to be by 2030 or something crazy like that. And there was this moment, number one, of opportunity. If you were doing anything online in the middle of 2020, the fishing was easy. But there was also this question of like, hey, has this fundamentally changed things? Like, is the physical world going away? Where does the chart go from here? And what happened was the chart reverted right back down to the trend line post-COVID. And so we had to kind of pay the piper for a lot of abnormal growth. And we had to come down the backside of the mountain. And now we're back at the trend line. And so we're back into this kind of healthy growth trajectory, which is the point you're making, Sean. But if you started in e-commerce in 2020, 2021, like your expectations of what that's like were going to be skewed just because of the environment that we were living in. And now we're in hopefully a more normal environment and one where you can grow your business in a predictable way.
Yeah, I wanna pivot this to a second tweet. Philip Jackson posted a screenshot of it was him and a bunch of his friends. He was at a party in
I
LA.
saw that one.
They
Yeah.
were all consumer founders, and he's like, 18 months ago, these people all had brands. Now they're all bankrupt. Like, I'm summarizing it. It was less bombastic. It was less drastic. However he says it. Well, Finn will promise to link that one too. And I want to talk about that as a reality, right? That like all of you guys are old heads, right? I mean, Jason's been selling stuff since what, the Stone Age. Mike, you've been selling it since the Bronze Age. Uh, like anyone who's been around this industry since 2014 knows that like COVID was this massive pull forward, and then like we had like a little bit of a recession afterwards, right? The industry has definitely been in a recession, and we're coming out of it. If you posted any revenue growth in 2022 or 2023 or 2024, if any of those years beat 2020 or 2021, you're an outlier. You're crushing it. Good for you, right? But the reality is a lot of people came into the industry then, right? COVID was their wake up call to come into e-commerce, and then they burn the fuck out because how can you go from your first year being big to your second year being lower? It's so demoralizing. It kills a lot of brands. It fucks up fundraising. So that's real. That's all I'm trying to say is that like we were if software's in a recession right now or a depression, e-commerce is as well. And I think e-commerce it's been doing the work to fight its way out of it. And I think this Q4 we will get 16.4%. That's the magic number. I think we'll get that penetration in Q4.
Well, and one of the points that I think we've talked about this before, but it's a great time to bring it up is that you want to make your business anti-fragile. You want to be like a cockroach. And what happened during 2020, 2021 is people extended themselves in ways with their inventory, with their fundraising, with their balance sheets, where we needed to continue to have this really unsustainable growth of e-com where it had to stay at these levels or you were cooked. And then on top of that, you got the iOS 14 rollout and it just annihilated a lot of the industry. So it's just been a really difficult time. But this is what happens in industries. Industries have ebbs and flows and they have really difficult times. Have you guys seen the hiring statistics for software developers right now? Like it is an absolute bloodbath out there if you're graduating. I mean, I was reading a tweet about a guy graduating from Cal Poly with a 4.0 and can't get an offer. And it's just kind of crazy, but that is kind of where we're at in software development with AI and a bunch of different things really being disruptive. You're never going to escape from disruption, but I do think being able to create a situation where whatever the market around you is doing, you're not going to get taken under because as Warren Buffett says, like the first rule is, don't go bankrupt. You get taken out of the game, it's over. And so I think you're right though, Sean. Like one of the big questions I'd have for you is, okay, so now that you're optimistic and there's this return to growth, how's that impact the way that you're making decisions?
Yeah. I anyone else want to engage on the pod? Matt, Jason, you guys got.
Well, I want to bring up one thing because I think this is important context. When you're looking at, so what Sean's talking about is e-commerce penetration as a percentage of total retail sales, right? That's like the stat. The level below that, which I think is important for people to look at, is there's two other numbers that you want to pay attention to. So penetration rate by category, right? Like books is an incredibly high penetration rate, whereas something like toys and games might be a little lower. So by category, there's already certain categories have really high e-commerce numbers.
Hard goods in general are really high.
Like apparel is weirdly high. It's like 40 some percent, right? Then the other thing to look at is how fast is the penetration rate growing in those categories? Because again, some of them are just ripping, like grocery in the last 3-4 years. COVID was actually a permanent great accelerator for all things food delivery. Like that didn't actually slow down from a growth rate. It just stayed up. But people didn't do that before COVID.
Yeah. Okay. One of my favorite jokes on the internet now is people talking about like how food prices are really high.
Yeah.
And like the response is like, are food prices higher? Did you order a private taxi for your
burrito? That's a great meme. Well, one other thing worth mentioning to what Matt's saying is that there are certain categories that are almost impossible to disrupt, or they're going to be much slower to disrupt, like automotive parts. It's like, well, that's going to happen at a service center. And so I do think the 16% is kind of misleading because it implies that, e-commerce has not been as disruptive as it is. When you look at categories that really lend themselves towards e-commerce, it is eating physical retail at a very rapid rate.
You want others to chime in? Let me give you just a little perspective here. I think generationally, you're just going to see with the turnover, right? With the different generations here, the population change, the demographic change, it's going to keep driving ecom. I mean, there's no question. There's people that just can't do it now. That they're just not going to be around. Like my parents, they tried to buy my wife flowers. I sent them the link. Like they couldn't even execute the purchase. Um, so there's going to be this natural shift. There are some industries that I think they just kind of warrant in person, and some people, people just do like to shop in person. But like you said, Instacart, I think Instacart's incredible because it just saves you time, and for a lot of people, time is money, and there's so many of these things. And the question then is like, what's happening now? What's going to happen in Q4? I'm very curious to get everyone's thoughts on taking what Sean just talked about and his bullishness, and see what they think Q4 is going to be like.
Hold on, before we go there, can I ask a question, Jason? You just made me think of something. So like the generation thing is really interesting. If you unpack it from like, boomers all the way down to whatever the youngest generation's called, because they're the youngest generation, so comfortable, like they're native digitals, right? Like they're just so comfortable with everything online. Does that weaken Amazon's position over time? Because my parents live in a retirement community in Phoenix. It's pretty much just Amazon boxes at every house there. Like it's a golf course community. I just watch Amazon boxes show up every day. Does that change as the younger generation who will shop from anybody because that's just how they transact their entire lives? Does Amazon's position get weaker as an e-commerce store? Forget the rest of their business.
Well, I think they have half of all e-commerce GMV right now. So if you're going to bet that it goes up to 75 or down to 25, I think the answer is you bet down to 25.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like I don't think there's a rush. They've already dominated everything they can dominate, and now their margins, everybody's opportunity, right? They're going to cram fucking ads in and charge fees to raise prices. And if you're a merchant, you just want to sell other places. So I do think it could harm Amazon in the long run. I want to circle back to it's at 16%. Yes, you guys said this. It cannot go to 100. Like, it will never go to 100. You're going to buy some things in person. I think the natural ceiling to this is like 40-ish%, maybe 35%. But what I'm saying is I think everything that can be e-commerce will be e-commerce by the end of the decade, right?
Or at very least hybrid. I mean, I think one of the things that makes this conversation too binary is that it's just not how the retailers are approaching it. Like Walmart is trying to get you to buy groceries online where they do the delivery for you, but also they're trying to sell you hard goods. But then also they have lockers in the store where they're trying to get you to come in and buy it online, but then pick it up on the store in a different mechanism. In fact, with Target, buy online, pick up in store is the entire strategy behind their .com They want to get people to shop, to bring them into the stores. So my big take on this is just that the winners over the last 6-7 years are clearly not the people that have said I'm all in on e-commerce, but that they've been all in on hybrid omni-channel. And that's the thing that's going to really eat everything, is that being able to find ways to intelligently combine physical with digital seems like it's the strategy.
Yeah. And then Jason brought up the generation thing. Yes. I mean, dude, how long until the older boomers, unfortunately pass away? It's like maybe 5 years. like
I keep hearing about boomers, and I've been hearing about them my whole life. Like at some point the boomers go away, right?
Yeah, I mean, because it's the baby boom post World War II, people born in the 50s. I'm like, okay, they're 70 now. Like they're going to 75,
Yeah.
80. Like, I mean, unfortunately, I don't know how much longer boomers will be the biggest generation in America. But dude, the other thing is, have you guys ever asked Gen Z to do something on a computer? They're actually not very good on computers. Like, ask them to unzip a file. That's another meme floating around the internet. They have no fucking idea how to do that, right? Like,
I don't know what a zip is. Yeah.
yeah, like
Is that a form factor thing though, Sean? Like that the younger generations grew up mobile first, whereas us on the pod grew up with a desktop before we got a smartphone.
yeah, and maybe this is me being like, they don't know how to use rotary phones, but no, they actually only know how to use apps and browsers. Like,
Mm.
if there's any sort of IT related thing, like if they're fucking, they have no idea what to do.
So here's a stat to that point. In the US, if you look at mobile phone shopping, 80%, 79% of it is adults aged 18 to 34. So
Wow.
all this buying is happening in the younger cohorts, and that wave is going to really transform things, as you're saying, as these older generations pass on.
I wonder what the e-commerce penetration rate is by generation to give
I
us
know
a
I was
feel for
trying to
where
see
it
if I
could
could
go.
get to it. I don't think you can get to that data yet. But I think you can infer that, like for our website, let's just do some back of the envelope math. For most websites, you're between 80 and 90% mobile traffic, right? Is that what you guys are? Okay,
Yes.
so if you just say, let's just say 90% of our traffic is mobile and 80% of that is coming from people, under 35 or under 35, then that would imply that 70 something percent of e-commerce purchasing is happening from people under 35.
Dude,
But that's traffic. Is that traffic or purchases?
Yeah, well, and mobile doesn't convert as well as desktop. I mean, we're having to back of the envelope it, but I do think we know intuitively that younger generations are way out indexing on e-commerce versus physical. And it's too bad we don't have these stats, because you probably could project out and kind of get a picture of what's going to happen over the next 10 or 15 years a lot easier if we knew that number.
Sean, how often do you buy mobile versus desktop?
I'll actually rarely buy on mobile just because, I mean, I work for a living, unlike a lot of Gen Z. So I'm always on my fucking desktop.
Just sitting at a
Man,
computer, yeah.
Gen Z is just catching a massive stray from Sean today.
Yeah, well, dude, I'm going to send them a file, see if they can unzip it. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Operator's Northbeam ad unit. So 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you all about how, if you have any problems with Northbeam, you can directly message Austin, the CEO. He is there. He will set up your ad account. He will make your bet. He'll give you cookies. Really, they have a dedicated team of people, probably 30, 40, 50 reps at this point, who will make sure Northbeam is working correctly and functioning so you can get amazing data out of this ecosystem. They will be more hands-on than any meta rep will ever be, and they're going to help you understand where your ad dollars are best spent, best positioned, and which ads are working. My team works with the Northbeam team literally every day. They're in my Slack. Maybe you don't get the same level of support as an operator, but they will be there to make sure it's working. And if you're not happy at all, just email Austin. He will take care of you. We use Northbeam every day. It's a benchmarking tool. It's super helpful for forecasting, daily pacing, inter-hour pacing. So we can see, like, if we just launched an ad in 2 hours, if it's working or not. That's what Northbeam does for us. So thank you, Northbeam, for the support. I'm customer probably number one. So thank you so much.
Well, one thing to add regarding Northbeam, because we just went through a contract renewal with them on their specifically on the MMM. And we got a pretty sweetheart deal, and I expect them to come back to us and raise our price, and they kind of deserve it. I was like, let me reach out to the team, and see how it's going, right? Because I'm not in the day to day. I get feedback, and the team was like, they have improved the MMM so much since we started it that they were like, we should definitely pay for this increase. So. And my team hates every agency and most SaaS. The only person that hates SaaS, the only more than my team is Sean, Frank. But yeah, I mean, they came to us. They're like, hey, you guys got the sweetheart deal. We wanted the first MMM clients. And I was very, very pleased when my team was like, it's really working well for us. So that's my little MMM plug.
let's circle back. Jason was talking about, okay, Sean, you're so bullish on Q4. What the fuck are you going to do about it? And I want to talk about a multi-year thesis I have. So this Q4, what am I doing about it? Well, I still think the US consumer is in a weird spot. So I'm going to discount more aggressively. I'm going to spend a lot of money. And I mean, dude, this Q3 was bigger than our Q2. That has never happened in company history. Okay. Like we just posted a record breaking Q3, our biggest Q3 ever, and it's beaten Q2 this year and Q2 last year. Holy shit, that has never happened. Right. So what that shows me is that the first part of the year was probably a little bit harder than the back half. The back half seemed to be doing well, and the strategy seems to be working. We were discounting more aggressively. International markets are in the worst they've ever been. I think the UK is in a major recession. And if you ever just look at like Canadian GDP per capita over the past 5 years, it's down. It's like the international markets are really struggling. So what do I think happens in Q4? I think no matter who wins the election, we're going to get more rate cuts. We're going to get more stimulus. The U.S. economy is going to fucking rip. I mean, I trade Tesla options and I'm massively up, guys. So I think everything is kind of working. And what's the multi-year thesis? E-commerce benefited from cheap Facebook ads and mobile penetration. In 2010, 50% of people had a smartphone, something less than that. Now everyone has a smartphone. I think the next 5 years, to finish out the decade, we are going to benefit from more time on device, new devices, more screen time, and the ad players rolling out more ad units. That's really what I think the benefit is. And we've seen like green sprouts of success when it came to like creator brands or whatever. I think there's actually the next big boom for e-commerce will be creator collectives. It'll be like 3 to 5 creators coming together who all drive different people to buy the same brand that they launch, and it'll be like affiliate driven, right? TikTok Shop proving that like there is appetite for mass market affiliate. YouTube's getting into affiliate. So what I would see is, kind of Logan Paul and KSI. KSI, yeah. Logan Paul and KSI kind of did this with their brands. 2 creators coming together to drive 2 different audiences to purchase the same product. Imagine 4 creators, all with a different type of consumer coming in and launching something. I think that's what brands start to look like in the back half of this decade. But we're going to get meta search ads. We're going to get messaging ads from Snapchat. We're going to get messaging ads from X. We're going to get messaging ads from Meta at some point. We're going to get just way more search ads for all those people, way more AI ads for all those people. And that's what I think the real bullish case is more ad units. And that's all we need.
What's the
okay? So I want to ask a question about this. Facebook released these new glasses.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen this? The ones that they're pretty intense. You can control it with your hand even. It can pick up what your hand is doing through like some kind of a wrist input. And Zuckerberg has gone on record as saying he thinks over the next few years that these glasses will replace cell phones. So, number one, do you think that's true? That's pretty bold. And number two, if that were to be true, if we were to go away from like say desktops and mobile phones into more of an integrated device, something like glasses, like how does that change? Like Zuckerberg knows more about ads than probably anybody in the world. And the guy who knows more about ads than anybody in the world is saying phones are going to get replaced with these glasses. So what does that mean?
Well, hold on. Can we also just like call a spade a spade? Zuck and mobile phones don't have a great relationship. Like Apple and Facebook aren't the best of friends. So like it's a bold prediction. I don't know how
he's incentivized to see it that way.
Of course. I mean, his perfect world is he removes the hardware intermediaries between him and the user. Like he'll own the gateway to the user, right? Right now he doesn't, not even close. So there's some side of that is like he wants that to be true. I don't know, man. I think it's like I'm not smart enough to know where the world is going from a device form factor. I struggle with glasses as like it. I actually think, Mike, that this mostly comes down to how good AI gets.
Right. Somebody gave me those Ray-Ban, those Meta Ray-Ban glasses.
Those are cool.
And I mean, they're cool for like a minute, and I know people that swear by them. Very few people swear by them, but I this is just ecom grandpa talking here. But they weren't for me. But who knows? I mean, maybe the kids. I don't know. Sean, have you tried them?
Well,
I mean, Sean just made a great point though. Like already younger generations are very app, like they interface through apps. Older generations will actually like use a computer and they know how to like navigate some like a layer below just the app interface. So there might be a world where the next generation below interacts with like computing just changes for them.
yeah. Well, I went to the Snapchat event and I used Snapchat spectacles. So
Mm.
everyone's making fun of their glasses for being ugly, but they do the identical thing. They are sunglasses you can put on and you can look at the real world, and I look kind of normal wearing them. But then when you want to, there's a screen with holograms, and I played games. Dude, I played basketball with them, and you shoot, it shows you the arc to shoot at, and when you make a shot, it keeps score for everybody. So like you just look in the top right of your eyes and there's a score with everybody, and like fun animations. There's dancing hot dogs in your world or whatever. So I don't think anything is replacing the phone, right? The phone did not replace your computer. I'm on a fucking desktop right now. The tablet did not replace my computer. I have a tablet for other shit. You, I have a watch for certain things. I think the sunglasses just become part of the device network. And
The stack.
yeah,
Like that's all it is. It's just going to be another thing.
It
I'm
could be. It
super
could be
excited
that
for
in
it.
20 years, this could be the way it goes. And it's possible, right? That young people really adopt it, and it's just that seamless. But I mean, it still has to connect to something.
There's some use cases. So I've used the Ray-Bans, and I would say there are some use cases where it's pretty awesome. Like one example, it gives me the feel of something that's primitive and not quite there yet. And I think these new ones are probably a big step forward towards it. For example, I went on vacation to Florida with my son last December. And we did a lot of things like riding sea-doos and parasailing and stuff like that. And I'm able to have those sunglasses on and take video and pictures without a phone out, without disrupting kind of my field of vision or he and I and what we're doing. And it was super cool. But one of the killer apps, just, I don't know, maybe for me, that was obvious as I had those on is I want this thing to be able, when I see somebody, to be able to say, hey, that's so and so, this is the last time you talked to them, and give me information about them. Like that would be a killer app. If it could just remind me people's names and when the last time I communicated with them was. Like another, I think another example is that there's like a lot of times throughout my day where I'll see something and it'd be like, oh yeah, I need to buy X. I need to get more milk, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. And I could see how vision could be a part of that with shopping.
Oh
That
man, yes.
as I'm going through my day, you suggestively sell to me when I look in my fridge and I see something's gone. Yeah, I'm gonna be like, if my glasses were like, hey, you're out of coffee, I saw you just throw it away. You want some more? It's like, yes, and that's probably where commerce is going, where it's like we said, just like it's omni-channel, it's this fusion of your desktop and your mobile phone and vision and voice, and they're coming together in more seamless ways.
dude. And yeah, that's exactly it. Is that like when you call an Uber, you're going to pull your phone out because you're going to show where the app is, but then your glasses will tell you when the Uber gets there, right? Like,
Oh, that's a great example. Yeah, the car is red or whatever. All of a sudden, like the car is outlined or something where I don't have to figure out. I'm not be like, "Hey, are you here for Mike?" Like there's a lot of primitive kind of friction in the system right now. And once you start kind of from a first principles perspective, saying, "How would this work if it was ideal?" You start to see all these use cases.
dude, yeah, it'll remind you of a bunch of shit. It's another device in the repertoire, which just means more screen time, which just means more ad units sold. Like that's what it comes down to. Right now, people spend 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day on some sort of screen. A lot of those screens are paywalled, right? If you're watching Netflix, they can't show you ads all that easily, right? You pay for the ability to get out of those ads. This is just your screen time will go to 16 hours a day. You'll have your fucking AirPods in all the time. You'll have your watch all the time, and it'll probably actually be better for society than people just sitting on their fucking ass scrolling, because at least you the phone is a beautiful tool for getting work done. I get Slack notifications, I can respond, I can talk to you guys, text my friends, but now I can also take a walk and do that same shit, right? So Anyway, why am I bullish on e-commerce? We are not technologists here, but what it comes down to is more ad units have always proven to be better for us. More screen time has proven to be better for us. And the natural state is more frictionless shopping over time. We get to be merchants of an amazing infrastructure built out around us. If it's Amazon's fulfillment network, if it's USPS, if it's Shopify, whatever. And all of them are fighting like literally Godzilla type battles against each other, right? They are like spending money and like building AI shit and like, fighting, doing mergers, whatever. And we just get to show up with our little cart and sell goods to each other. And it, the whole world basically caters to us being merchants, people buy physical things. Imagine it like, I mean, this is the punching boy lately has been Salesforce because it's a $40 billion a year more, however much fucking money they do. It's crazy. And no one really knows what they do. And it's just kind of like an app that keeps track of all your shit. Like AI is going to replace all of that, but it's not going to replace physical wallets, is what I've realized.
Well, I mean, Altman talks about this, that the future we're hurtling towards, and, I don't know if I believe OpenAI is going to be the person to usher that in at the rate that they're killing off executives, but that have you guys seen the comment, like the Hezbollah, org chart next to the OpenAI org chart? That's a great meme. But the idea that the future learning things and having pieces of information is not going to be helpful because the AI will abstract all that. But that being able to create things and provide experiences and, to your point, Sean, provide physical goods, that isn't going away. Nobody has drawn the path how, AI makes it where I don't need a wallet, right? Or I don't need something to hold my keys. And I think that that's where we're uniquely positioned in a good way, that I don't think this coming technology disruption is going to be bad for us. I agree with you. I think it's good for us. It's a tailwind.
Yeah, and okay, I'm gonna defend wallets again. I always fucking do this. People are like, oh, well, my wallet's just on my phone. I'm like, bro, I was just in Mexico. I'm like, yeah, try pulling out tap to pay when you're in Mexico. They're gonna stare at you, be like, what the fuck are you talking about? The other thing is Gen Z is known for being so anxious. I think they will be like, I have to have my ID and money when I leave the house because of how much anxiety they have about just doing general shit. So, bro, I'm bullish on wallets in the future. I'm bullish on ecom. I just had the best Q3 ever. I think we're going to have the best Q4 ever. As long as you're doing the right stuff. I don't think it's time to be precious about price or brand or MSRP. I think you have to meet customers where they are, because I think a lot of the country is still not feeling the best about the economy. And I think it's just, we have to get through the election before people start feeling better.
Yeah,
Your
think the
best
customer is not in
Q3
shape.
ever is I see the bullish tweets and I'm loving them. Clearly you're up, you talked about what you were up over, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, how much did it exceed your expectations or budget?
Yeah. Here's one where a little more unique. After Q2 sucks so bad, I had no expectations and no budget. so
This is what it is. We're either falling short of expectations or we're out kicking our expectations. And the only place we're right at our expectations is when we're swinging from one extreme to the other, right?
yeah. I mean, like, I know a lot of people being like, yeah, we're gonna miss budget by X or Y. I'm like, dude, as soon as Q2 sucked, I was like, well, we're flying by the seat of our pants. We're just gonna try to make as much money every day as possible. So that's what we're doing now, and we're doing it. So I'm super happy.
I'm pretty interested though, Sean, because for a long time, I really associated you with the, hey, just charge more kind of mentality. And I know you did for a long time. I mean, you raised price, raised price, raised price. But I've heard you really advocate for discounting more recently. How do you think about that? Is it just totally conditional? You're putting your finger up in the air and saying, do I think discounting will work? Or do you have some kind of like a deeper thought process here?
Strong beliefs held loosely. So, we raised prices in 2015. Our Ridge wallet was $45. Now the entry level price is $95. But what we've found out is that it's this year in particular, I think, with, I don't know what it is, recessionary challenges, discretionary income challenges. I do think there are sectors of the economy that are in borderline depression, if it's tech sales, if it's e-commerce, whatever. And in aggregate, I think the economy is doing okay, but it's just pocket from pocket. Like, dude, if you are a real estate agent right now, you got no fucking money. Like nobody's buying houses. So it's just, yeah, I guess it's finger in the air, just figuring out what works. But what we found out is a way to segment the product lineup that we can always have something on sale for some people, and that has responded really. And people have just been loving that. So
I think that's a great that's actually worth like putting a pin in. With when you're a farmer, they do this thing called crop rotation. And the idea behind crop rotation is like if you grow corn and you grow corn year after year after year, eventually the soil gets depleted of certain nutrients. And so you grow corn for a couple of years and then you grow wheat and then you grow okra. I don't know, whatever. You rotate. And so it pulls different nutrients out of the soil and puts different nutrients back in. And because you're not trying to do the same thing over and over and over again, you're able to grow stuff, kind of indefinitely on that soil. I think this idea of having a portfolio where you're always discounting something, you can always tell a save story somewhere, is really critical. And it's one of the reasons to have a lot of different ornamentations. It's one of the reasons to have a lot of different products, because there's just going to be a certain percentage of your customer base, call it 20%, that is only going to buy when they have a save story of some sort. Maybe that's because their economic condition, or maybe it's just even their mental positioning that they're like the type of person that wants to get a deal. And so even this new product that we're about to release, we're literally planning the number of variations around the idea of we want to constantly be able to run a deal with one of our variations and rotate over time as a part of the strategy.
This point about discounting or having something that can be on sale, I think it's really a part of a bigger issue, which is having a good offer at all times. Figuring out having a good offer, and sometimes it's discounting, sometimes it's the sweepstakes. Um, it's really about presenting the offer. I mean, we rolled out our version of the Ridge sweepstakes a couple of weeks ago, and it's done pretty well. It's done what I expected. I expected to get a pretty good bump from it, and we've gotten it. And this is not, we're not putting anything on sale. We're just giving people an opportunity to win like an incredible prize. It's not a gold-plated Cybertruck, but it's still a great prize. And so I think it's really important that everyone, sure, discounting sales, those we run different sales during every like traditional retail sale period, because in the cookware space, it's just always the way it's been, and that's what we've done. We've ratcheted down the discounting in 22 and 23. I think we talked about this a little bit on a previous pod. I'm leaning a little bit towards where Sean is, which is we probably should have run some better deals earlier this year. Would have definitely helped us, but that's just a different kind of offer. So I think people should really think about, like, how do we present the customer with a valuable offer. Discounting is one, but like be creative and find others as well.
What were you using as kind of KPIs or a way of evaluating your sweepstakes, Jason?
Well, there's just year over year top line growth, month over month
So
top line
actual
growth.
sales, like you're
Yeah,
not
sales
looking so
numbers.
much at like, hey,
Well, there's
signups
more.
with email
Oh,
or
there's more.
whatever.
There's a lot, and then there's the email signups. Yeah, there's big email signups. I mean, I was just talking to a guy the other day, and they just went in. He's like, we went in and we put in for the sweeps. I'm like, well, what'd you buy? Like, we didn't buy anything. Like, oh, great, thanks. And you went and you signed up for the sweeps. Like, we didn't buy anything. But there's a lot of people like that too, and we've got massive bet increases in email signups, etc.
yeah, I think Jason's being humble. I mean, him and his team have shared some stuff with us, and I mean, I'm gonna go out and say it. They're getting a like 40% email opt-in rate. Like,
It's wild.
That's a big number.
Yeah. I mean, in our wildest dreams, we might hit 15, something like that. Let's go.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
We just steal everything that Ridge does and try to do it better. That's my strategy.
It's
at
a good
HipScale.
strategy.
Dude, as long as I can be on the board, I don't care. I'll take easily 1% board share. It's going to be fantastic.
It sounds like
Uh,
some alpha brainwaves right there.
Yeah, dude, Sigma only. Yeah, having a funnel clearer or having a reason to buy. Like, what's the reason to buy now? That's what sweeps is. And people should just mix more things into their repertoire because I've watched a lot of brands. They're like Black Friday, we discount. I'm like, okay, well, what do you do in February? They're like, nothing. I'm like, okay, like gift with purchase, free customization, a sweepstakes, like, doing a discount, doing collaboration, doing limited edition drops. All these things are just reasons to buy. And the best thing you can do is give unique, different reasons to buy as many times in the year as you can, right? Like, you have to figure that out, or else what are you going to do in April? Like,
Well, and I would make the argument that in a lot of ways it's easier. So for example, we just had what we called the Harvest Collection, which is like a whole series of cups around fall and Halloween. And we just crushed it with this thing. In a lot of ways, we've got really tough comps year over year for September. We were going to be down in some channels year over year, but we were up in D2C because we just had this massive, and it's because nothing's going on in September. Like, you having something interesting to talk about, like a sweepstakes, like a special new release, you're not competing against a bunch of noise. During Black Friday, it's like everybody is trying to talk to you. Everybody's running some kind of a deal. And so it's more challenging. And I actually think that if you can pick out the points in the year where there are natural lulls and you can have something compelling, you can make a lot of hay during those periods.
dude, I'm checking out the Harvest Collection. I knew about Spooky Ghost. I didn't know about Candy Corn. I got to pick that up.
That's the newest one. So we did a pretty cool hybrid here where we dropped a bunch of stuff on August 28th, and then or 24th. It was a Saturday, August 24th. And then we every week we had another special limited edition that we dropped in limited quantities. And it's kind of coincided with us becoming active on TikTok shops, which was great timing because this is like perfect TikTok shop type stuff. I think that we felt pretty stupid for not being on there earlier with the performance we had, because within a week we were having days where we were doing $30,000 or $40,000.
Okay, can we talk for 2 minutes about TikTok shops?
Yeah.
Let's do it because there's so much talk about TikTok shops. Apparently, that's something good for Simple Modern, which is awesome. I think something good's been happening. I hear a lot of people totally panning TikTok shops. So I got Mike saying it's been beneficial to him. Sean, what about you?
Oh, dude, TikTok shop sucks.
Okay.
I did just buy Simple Modern cups. Erica 10 is a leaked code. I got 10% off. So I'm just letting you know right now, Mike.
It's Sean Sigma for 50% off your order.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you guys should go through the checkout flow. Check it out. He's got, I think it's called Disco running. I can get a cut 20% off new customer offer. I can get the.
Have you guys used Disco? It's pretty interesting
Yeah.
because Disco optimizes for what converts. And it's pretty interesting to look at what are the other brands that it suggests for your store. And then it's also really interesting to go to other companies that, like, for example, Liquid IV, that have it, and to see that Simple Modern's popping up in their Disco. Like, so you get an idea of where else your customers are shopping. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Ending on TikTok shops. I think you need to be hitting a demographic that's on TikTok and shopping. So all of the top 10 items are supplement items, right? Or beauty. Those are the two things that do really well. Supplements or beauty. If you're not in those, like Jason, you will never ever work on TikTok shop. It's like it is the exact opposite customer that is shopping there. Nobody's like, yeah, I'm going to spend $600 on some pants off a TikTok shop. It's like, it's doing talking about demographic differences. Like, it's just, that's not what people are buying. They're buying something that like will make, what would crush on TikTok shop? Booty lift leggings, shit like that. Right. It's a different customer completely. We do maybe $1,000 a day on TikTok shops. It's like, it's not worth writing home about. It's not even worth really setting up or doing, but Yeah, I'm sure Mike's doing 10 grand a day. It's a
Well,
perfect
it's
thing.
we literally had days where we were doing 40 grand, and I think it's a couple things. It's price point, like you're saying, Sean. Like these are impulse purchase price points that people are buying at. There's usually a discounting strategy, although in our case we weren't using one, but that's usually a heavy component of it.
That blows my mind right there. I've very rarely seen brands brag about TikTok shops where TikTok's not funding a 40% off discount.
Yeah, it was very crazy. But I mean, again, the key is you have to have something that's very trend based. That's very like, oh, that's interesting. I see it. I like it. I want it. It's a price point I can buy it at. And there's just not a lot of those types of products. So this is a good example of, for us, one of the reasons why you want to have a bunch of different tools in your bag. TikTok shops might be good for us about 40 days a year. And the rest of the year, it's basically worthless. Like, and nobody, like to your point, Sean, it's not like, here's a black water bottle. Come buy a black water bottle. Like nobody's finding that compelling most of the year. But when you do have like, oh, candy corn, that's kind of interesting. Or we've got a really cool, the one that'll drop tomorrow is this golden leaves design that's very cool. And I'm sure that would do really well on TikTok because it's like you just see it and it's like, oh, that's cool. I want to buy it right now. And I can, it's whatever, 35, 40 bucks. I can afford it. So having it is another way. I mean, this is something I've taken from you guys. We need to develop more channels, and it's been encouraging to see that it works for us.
All right, boys.
That's the pod.
That is another Operators podcast in the books. I hope you liked it. You're here. Subscribe. Join the newsletter. Buy from Ridge Wallet. Use coupon code Sean. Don't buy from the other guys. I'm trying to win the e-commerce award this year. Talk to you guys later. Goodbye.